Okay, we are live again on TikTok. I am back live here on TikTok. I got my camera set up to a better situation here. Hopefully this works a little better. This is my second attempt tonight at going live. Going to see how long I can stay up before I start getting reported, before I start having issues with Trump uppers in the comments, things like that. We're going to be talking politics. Did a little bit of this earlier, but I'm going to talk about it again. We've got a lot going on right now in this country. So we got a lot of things we can talk about here. We're going to be talking about, let's see, you got Judge Aileen Cannon down in Florida with the Florida Documents case. Now she's got a hearing coming up where she's going to be listening to arguments from Donald Trump about whether or not to dismiss the case based solely on the fact that they are claiming that Jack Smith was improperly appointed, and he was unconstitutionally appointed. Now I don't think that argument's going to hold any water, but they're going to listen to it. But see, Aileen Cannon is backed into a corner with this. If Aileen Cannon sides with Donald Trump, Jack Smith goes to the 11th Circuit. At the 11th Circuit, he's going to basically hand them a stack of things she has done this far with this case, none of which has been impartial. Everything has been very blatantly on the side of Donald Trump. And they're going to say, look, help us out here. And she's going to probably get recused. Whenever he is finally able to go to the 11th Circuit and do that, she probably gets kicked off this case. Now, we got a few people joining the live here. If you're just joining, I'm talking news and politics. If there's something you want me to talk about, leave a note in the comments. But Aileen Cannon, when Jack Smith goes to the 11th Circuit, is going to get kicked off. I have no doubt in my mind that Aileen Cannon will not be on this case when it actually goes to trial. If Jack Smith with this dismissal, if she tries to dismiss Jack Smith and say, well, he was unconstitutionally appointed, like I said, Jack Smith goes to the 11th Circuit. It gets appealed. She gets recused. And then if she sides with Jack Smith and says, no, Donnie, this isn't going to work, and we can't do that, and moves it on, well, then Donald Trump is pissed about it. And when Donald Trump is mad about it, you're going to see, whatever retribution he has planned. I think there's a couple things as to why she's helping Donald Trump like she is. I think part of it is she is playing for an audience of one. I think she's playing up for Donald Trump as kind of an audition should he get reelected, which I don't think can possibly happen. I'm more confident about this than I was about Joe Biden winning in 2020. But I think if she's playing up to Donald Trump because she's thinking if Donald Trump does get reelected, there will probably be a Supreme Court appointment open, at least one vacancy, because both Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas are talking about potentially retiring with the next Republican president and letting a Republican pick their replacement. That would guarantee their 6-3 supermajority conservative majority on the Supreme Court for decades, literal decades, because they would put in somebody young, somebody 40-ish, 50-ish tops, who would be on the Supreme Court for 20 or 30 years or more, depending on how long they're there. So I think she's playing for Donald Trump so that he appoints her, and a Republican Senate would push through any nominee by Donald Trump. Now, I don't think we have to worry about Joe Biden losing in November. I think there's beyond a reasonable doubt here that Joe Biden will win um, in November. Everything's going Joe Biden's way. The donations. Look at the fundraising. Donald Trump is getting beaten by twice. Joe Biden is fundraising at least double what Donald Trump is fundraising, and Donald Trump isn't using the funds he is raising to actually campaign. He's using a lot of those to pay his legal bills. I've heard upwards of $90,000 plus a day, minimum. He's siphoning money out of the RNC, with the RNC not having money in its coffers. When the down ballot races, when your representatives and your senators come calling and saying, "Hey, I'm in a very competitive district. I might lose here. I need money for ads and things like that." There's not going to be the money with the RNC there, so that's kind of where that's sitting now. But I just don't think Joe Biden can lose to Donald Trump. You take in the donations, you take in the fact that Donald Trump had been responsible, and he's admitting that he is responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade. He says some completely and totally unhinged things. He says whatever he thinks of. Whatever he says in the moment that he thinks is going to resonate with the person he's talking to, the audience he thinks he's talking to, he will say. There is no grand strategy when Donald Trump is talking outside of a few main talking points. Donald Trump, when he is talking, he'll say to one group of people, "Oh yeah, we should ban abortion. I'm glad I overturned Roe v. Wade." But then the next group, if he thinks it's slightly better, he'll say, "Well, we gave it back to the states, and the states should really decide. It's a states issue. We don't need a national ban." So he hedges his bets on a lot of issues. I mean, look what he just did a couple days ago with his swamp the vote. He comes out and says, "We need to swamp the vote by mail, early in-person voting, absentee ballots. Whatever you have to do, get out, just vote. We can only beat them by turnout." Gee, it's only like that's exactly what the Democrats said 4 years ago. During the height of a pandemic, when we were saying to everybody for safety, don't stand in long lines voting in person. Get your absentee ballot. Go early. Help other people get their absentee ballot. Mail-in ballot. All sorts of things. We were saying do that because it's necessary to make sure people have the right to vote and people can access while we're dealing with a health scare. So the Democrats were saying that. Donald Trump comes out and says, "No, don't do that. It's rigged. It's fraudulent. It's fraudulent. Don't do it. Don't trust it. The only way to turn out is to vote in person. That's the best way to do it." Well, he did that because he wanted to see long lines of his supporters. He loves being able to visualize his support and get an idea for how many people actually like him and are supporting him. It's no different than his crowd sizes. He goes in and he has a rally in the Bronx. A few thousand people show up, but now there's a picture surrounding saying that was the crowd that went to see him. But you come to find out it's actually St. Louis from a Barack Obama rally. But he does that. His supporters put out a picture at the New Jersey rally where he only had 15,000 people tops, I think, show up. 100,000 people plus, and they put out some picture. Turned out to be a picture from Rio de Janeiro. So he's always been impressed with crowd size. He did that with his inauguration when he got inaugurated in 2016. He had a worse turnout than Barack Obama, but he couldn't accept that, so he made up numbers and, just lied about how big his turnout was. That's who he is. His ego cannot accept being second best at anything. I mean, look at what he did with NAFTA. He backed us out of NAFTA and pretty much reinstated NAFTA with the exact same conditions. I don't think anything really changed. The only difference is it has a new name, and he can say he did it. That's all it was. We got more people joining us on the live. If there is anything on your mind, go ahead and drop a comment so I know where to go with what I'm rambling about. Um, but as far as the election, like I said, look at the fundraising. Donald Trump is taking all the money that he comes in and he gets is all going to his legal fees or to prop up his businesses or what have you. And then he put his daughter-in-law as head of the RNC, who said their top priority is basically paying Donald Trump's legal fees and helping Donald Trump. So there's no money at the RNC level. Then Donald Trump turned around and told all of his supporters, basically, if you use my name, slogans, or anything in your mailers or in your emails or what have you, then you need to give me 5% off the top. So that's what they did. They're like, well, they're asking. He's asking for money at every point of the way. And how is there money if he's taking money at every step? How is there going to be money left for these down ballot races? Some of these down ballot races don't raise that much money. Some of your congressional races, they might only spend a total of $1 million. I don't know, but if they're in a competitive seat and they need help, there's no funds at the national level to help them. You're hearing about some of the state level Republican parties only having less than $100 and not able to meet some of their bills and trying to figure out how to make it happen because they're not getting donations. So I've said a lot, you don't trust polls, follow the money. If Donald Trump was actually leading in the polls as bad as he says he is, like if he was really as far ahead in the polls as what he said, he'd be leading the fundraising by leaps and bounds, and he's just not. He's trailing ridiculously. I think there's going to be a lot of races that are going to be up for grabs. I think there's going to be some races in predominantly red areas that Republicans would normally say are safe that might be in play. I mean, we hear Florida. Florida is going to put 2 referendums on the same ballot. On top of it being a presidential election year, they have I believe one of their senators is up this turn. Obviously, every member of the House is up for re-election, but they're also putting 2 referendums on the ballot in Florida. One is basically reversing the 6-week abortion ban that is currently in Florida and granting a state constitutional right to an abortion within the state limits. On top of that, there's also going to be a question about legalizing marijuana within the state of Florida. But neither one of those 2 issues favor Republicans in any way, shape, or form. Those both get high turnout, and the higher the turnout typically turns out more Democrats, more people voting against the Republicans. So it's going to be interesting to see how Florida turns out. Florida could be in play. I don't know what's going to go on with Texas. I think Texas might, at least the Senate seat in Texas might be in play because it's Ted Cruz. And nobody likes Ted Cruz. You might remember a couple of years ago when there was the power outage in Texas because their grid failed. He took off to Cancun, then tried to blame his daughters for him going to Cancun. On top of that, you have just the fact that he's a Trump humper and some of the other stuff he said. Like he voted just yesterday, I believe, to table that contraception bill, and he voted against it. None of that plays in the Republicans' favor. There is so many things the Republican Party is doing right now. I don't see them having a path forward. To winning anything. I think they lose the House. I think the Democrats keep control of the Senate. Now, whether it's going to be a 50-50 split again or it's going to be 51-49, it's going to be something like that. I think if Democrats have the Senate, I they Republicans are only defending 9 seats, and the other, what is that math? 24 seats, I believe, are all held by Democrats, and at least one of them we know for sure we will not get back or should not get back, and that is Joe Manchin's seat out of West Virginia. That one will probably flip red, which means to keep the just to keep the status quo and stay where we're at in the current Congress. We're in the Senate at 51-49. We would need to flip one of the other 9 seats and, not lose any more, which might be possible, but it's going to be a harder road for the Democrats to do. I think it is doable, but we're not going to have a clean sweep. We're not going to take 33 seats. That's just not going to happen. There are a couple seats that we just are not going to win. Now, I might get surprised if maybe they do elect a Democrat again in West Virginia, but I really don't think so. But I'm also not sad to see Joe Manchin go. Joe Manchin was never in it for, he was a Democrat, but he was a very conservative Democrat. And when it became a 50-50 split with the Democrats in control, he had a little bit of power. And as such, because he couldn't just vote against some things that did not play well to his voting base, and he'd have to vote for them, he had to be very careful about what he voted for in helping the Democrats. And then he also had to get gives and take. He had to get a lot of stuff given back and hold things up hostage to make sure he got better things for his district, so he could go back and say, well, see, they really wanted this thing passed, but I got you this other thing. And that's how politics is played, but he took it to a different level. Between him and Kristen Sinema, they both held up the first 2 years of the Biden administration from getting a lot done. We got a lot of people joining. If I'm not, all I'm seeing is join. I'm not seeing a lot of comments about anything you guys want to talk about. But if there is, go ahead, leave a comment. And we'll talk about it. Let's see. We got the Bob Menendez case. I have not been following that nearly as close as I should have. It has not caught my interest, but he is charged with, I believe, bribery and something else. And he's a sitting U.S. senator. He is a Democrat. But I think if he is convicted, the Democrats will do the right thing, and that is toss him out. I think he should have already given up his seat, but he has not. He is playing the I did nothing wrong card. We'll see when this trial is over which way the jury agrees, but anyway, let's see. We got the Hunter Biden case. Now Hunter Biden is up on a gun charge. The gist of this gun charge is that back when he was an addict, back in, I could be getting the year wrong. I think it was 2018, but I could be getting the year wrong. He bought a firearm, and when he did, he put on the form that he was not an active drug user, and that is a crime. Now, if he ends up getting convicted, Joe Biden has said he will not be getting a pardon, and he's going to let Hunter pay whatever price he has to pay, which I think is admirable. I am fairly certain that if the roles were reversed and it was one of the Trump children, Donald Trump would have issued them a pardon or shut down the investigation entirely, threatened people, and done everything else. Also of note, Jill Biden has been there almost every day. Let's see, we got from Joe, it says Trump has to give up his guns. Felons can't have guns. I don't know if he has to give them up. Like, I don't think he has to surrender them. I think he has to give them to somebody else. But yes, as far as I know, most states say felons can't have guns. And I heard New York is looking to revoke his gun permit. Now, I didn't know that he even had a gun permit. But kind of makes sense, considering his comment about what he could do on Fifth Avenue. I wonder if this is in regards to if the gun permit has anything to do with that DJT 45 gun that was down at the show that he had heard about, or that we had seen the reporting on, that he picked up and reportedly had purchased while he was out after he'd been indicted on all of these charges. I don't know if it's in regards to that or if he'd owned other guns. But either way, he is not allowed to have them in his possession now that he is a convicted felon. Joe saying that Trump owns 4. Okay, did not know that. But why did, he's going to have to do whatever he has to do with them. If that means he has to surrender them, if he has to give them to Eric or Don Jr. or what have you, he needs to take care of that and do the right thing. Or if he doesn't, well, that could be more charges. It could also go into willingness to follow court rules and things like that, and the judge could be considering that as part of sentencing. Now, we do have sentencing on the 11th, which is 4 days before the Republican National Convention, which is going to be interesting to see what Judge Marchand does. I don't know if he is going to go with prison time. I know a lot of us want to see Donald Trump in prison. That could be interesting to see him get jailed over that. But whatever Judge Marchand chooses to do, it's going to be interesting, but it's going to fall back on how much remorse and stuff does Donald Trump show. Donald Trump has not, as of yet, shown really any remorse. He acts like everybody is out to get him. It's all a fake. John Michaels says the judge has to incarcerate Trump. Well, the judge doesn't have to. We might want him to, and it might look like he should. Now, Donald Trump does have 34 felonies. Smart money would say you jail somebody who's got 34 felonies, but he's also a first-time offender. However, other first-time offenders have gone to prison. Martha Stewart comes to mind. Michael Cohen, who was part of this case. Yeah. Hate to break it to you, Roughneck, but he's not innocent. A jury of his peers found him guilty, so he has been proven to have committed crimes. And I've talked about it before on my channel. Cohen was a first-timer, so was Martha Stewart. Yeah, exactly. They both, it was the first time they had been convicted of any felony. They both did time. Short prison sentences, a few months each, I believe. But they still did. And they tried to put Michael Cohen back in a second time. And as far as what crimes? Well, everybody wants to come back to paying hush money is not a crime. And no, it's not. The fact that he paid Stormy Daniels to not talk about their affair is not the crime. What the crime is the fact that he put it in his books as a legal expense, as legal fees. You can't do that. I can't go take my dog to the vet and then go and try to claim it as medical bills for myself and write it off my taxes. That would be fraud. And effectively, that's what this is all about. Donald Trump had a scheme with Michael Cohen and Alan Weisselberg to repay Michael Cohen for this payment, this $130,000 plus an extra payment because by calling it legal fees, Michael Cohen was going to be hit with taxes on that as income, so they had to pay him extra, and then they gave him a bonus on top of that to make Michael Cohen whole, and basically as a thank you. Well, they came up with this payment plan of $35,000 a month after they added in some other legal fees that Cohen owed and a whole bunch of other stuff that they were dealing with. $35,000 a month, but they called it legal fees. If he would have put it in his books as repayment of a loan, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Donald Trump would not have been convicted. If he just would have paid the $130,000 to Stormy himself and wrote it down in his book, NDA payment, it would have been done. But because he tried to hide it and bury it in his books and call it something it wasn't, that's what led him to it. If they polled the jury, I guarantee the jurors, the jury did know what they convicted him of. They had 35 pages of instructions about fraud. It was fraud. It was about him falsifying these documents, and if they believed that these documents were not legit, that's what it was. And the jury did that. They came back. They had more testimony reread. They had the jury instructions reread to make sure they understood what they were doing. Part of the jury instructions does include what the crimes are that have been alleged and how that applies to the case. Yeah, a lot of Trumpers are in serious denial. They want to believe that nothing happened and everybody's out to get Trump. But for decades, everybody has been out to get Trump. If you listen to them, but the Emmys were rigged against The Apprentice. He said it going into the Iowa caucus. Well, if I don't win Iowa, then it was rigged against me. He didn't win Iowa. He has used that tactic his entire life. He didn't get he hasn't yet to get a gaming license in Las Vegas. The Trump Hotel in Vegas does not have a casino in it because they refused to give him one. Well, the gaming commission is rigged against Donald Trump. They just don't like me. So it's been a talking point for a long time. Donald Trump has always gone back to it's against him if things don't go his way. But if they go his way, he's a genius or everything's perfect. Yeah. Yeah, you're out of here. Having to do all this myself. I don't currently have any moderators. But yeah, I just blocked him. Oh yeah, Donald Trump believes he is owed a ton of victories. He thinks everybody owes him everything. He's been handed everything. There was a story out, I don't remember where I heard it, but apparently when he had the Trump Taj Mahal, it wasn't doing very good. He needed an influx of money. So he called his dad, called Fred Trump up. They came up with a plan. Fred Trump had a business, an employee, bring down $5 million in cash, go into the high limit room, cash it into chips, never make a single bet, and leave. He was handed a victory in that case. Donald Trump will say, he's already starting to say that he will accept the results if they're fair, but they're only fair if he wins. I might be paraphrasing slightly, but that's effectively what he has said. It's only fair if he is the winner, and that's completely ridiculous. I don't understand how anybody could support that man. If you knew, a lot of us know people like him in our everyday lives, and we think they're ridiculous. We don't like him. I don't know how he has gotten to this this big of a following and became this huge head of a movement and this head of a cult. And I just don't see how people understand that. But I don't think Donald Trump is going to win in November. I've been talking about it throughout this live. Fall of fundraising, Joe Biden's out fundraising Donald Trump by double. And you start adding in some of the other issues, and it's there's not a chance for Donald Trump to win. He overturned Roe v. Wade. He blocked the border bill. He says, well, things were better 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we were stacking bodies in refrigerator trucks because morgues were full. We lost 1 million people to COVID. Couldn't buy toilet paper at the grocery store. We were in a lockdown. All that got better thanks to Joe Biden and the Democrats. And I know there's going to be Trump supporters that say, but he got the vaccine. Okay, he got the vaccine that a lot of Trump supporters refused to take. And Joe Biden had to come in and figure out a distribution system because they had it. They had no way to get it to anybody. And as far as that goes, when Obama left, we had a pandemic response team. We had a plan. We had a playbook. Donald Trump threw it out, fired the doctors on the pandemic response team, said I don't pay people to sit around and do nothing. When we have an issue, we'll just find them again. We'll just hire new ones. Well, could you find them? No, you couldn't find experts at that point. They were busy dealing with the jobs they already had. They weren't gonna go back to work for your administration after a layoff. That's not how that works. That's not how government works. That really shouldn't be how businesses work. But when you bankrupt so many businesses, it's easy to see how he doesn't understand how business works. He doesn't have a clue. He's just been successful because he's been able to throw his name after things, declare bankruptcy when his businesses start losing money, strip the companies of any equity or assets before declaring bankruptcy, and walk away with a whole bunch of money and leaving a wake of destruction in his path. Welcome to everybody in the chat. His followers see themselves in him, and DT gives them permission to hate the people they don't like. That's exactly right. And I think part of it, too, is he talks on their level. He talks at about an 8th grade level, maybe even 6th. He says he doesn't use fancy words, and he gives them permission to hate on the same people. And on top of that, it wouldn't have been as bad if he didn't hold the office of president. But because he was a president, they hold that office in such high regard, as weird as it sounds, that gives it even more credence than just the words he said. Half the time in his speeches, he doesn't use actual words. Yeah, I saw that clip that's been going around now where he kind of just says a random assortment of letters and then skips like mid-thought to a different sentence. That was I don't know what that was. But like when you're watching him talk, he doesn't ever seem to have a full train of thought. He says a lot of partial sentences and mashes them together. And if you read the transcript, it doesn't make a lot of sense. TikTok Rocker says, hey, Eric, enjoy listening to you on the Rational Boomer. Well, yeah, thank you. I am on the Boomer podcast quite a bit. I enjoy being on the Rational Boomer podcast. Mike and I always have a good show. It's always a good conversation, really easy. Um, and if you guys haven't checked out Rational Boomer but found me, I encourage you to go give Mike over at Rational Boomer a follow, give him a listen, check out the podcast. He does a podcast every night. So it is, like I said, it's always fun. And for the most part, Mike and I agree on a lot, but I'm not above disagreeing with him too. I mean, that's the thing. That's how this is supposed to work. 20 years ago with politics, you would have both sides would, they might agree something needs done, and you'd come down to how or the money or whatever. Built It Jake says, "Yep, listen to Mike every day. Keep trying to find time to go on with him." Yeah, but I will tell you, if you want to get on with Mike, the easiest way to do it, send him an email with your schedule. Just tell him, "Hey, I'm available these days," and he'll send you back whatever works for him. The last couple times I have been on with Mike, I sent him an email and said, "Hey, I can be on any night this week after whatever time," and he said, "Okay, how about tonight?" It's really easy, and it's, like I said, it's always a fun show. All the listeners do a good job. But as I was saying, yeah, with politics, it used to be where it was, some give and take. Oh, 6 12s a week, that's rough. I used to do that. That takes its toll on the body. But there used to be give and take. It might be how you funded. It might be, who with, and some of it came down to pork. And a lot of the Republicans will say we need to cut the pork out of the budget. There's too much pork. Yet they're the ones that overfund the budget for a lot of stuff. I don't remember the bill. It's been a number of years ago. But there was something that needed passed, and they were short the votes. And one of the votes they had to get was right here, our senator from Iowa, one of them, Chuck. I'm older than chocolate chip cookies, Grassley, and he voted for it. But they put in a bunch of money to figure out why hog confinements smell. Well, I wish they would have given me the money they paid that grant out to figure out why hog confinements smell, because that seems like a no-brainer. You live in the state. If you're out in a rural area, you know what they have at hog confinements. The wind blows, that smells. There you go. But that's how government has worked for years. There's always give and take. There was, like I said, you would agree to fund something. I'll help you fund this. You help me fund that. Now you got 2 or 3 senators agreeing to work together. Next thing you know, you horse trade a little bit, and now you get everything funded that you need funded for your districts, but with support from people across the country. That seems to be how that works. I saw a video by Tom Powell Jr. earlier today. He was talking about Joe Biden as a vice president. And Joe Biden was brought in as the vice president because he could do that. He was brought in to fill a need in the Obama administration for somebody that they could send up to the Capitol and work with the senators and work with the members of Congress to make deals. And that's what he would do, is they would get deals done. And they would get, they would come to agreements, they would get things passed by working out, deals. And it started under Obama, really, but it wasn't as bad back then. It wasn't as much of, I'm going to block this just because the other party is trying to do it. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. I'm assuming you mean Joe Biden? Yeah. Joe Biden has backed the Republicans into a corner on multiple occasions. It wasn't this State of the Union. I think it was last year's State of the Union where he came out and he called them out for wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare. And the Republicans started booing it. He's like, oh, wait, great. So you're not going to cut it. I got, so let's leave it alone. And they all cheered. Joe Biden can work when he has members of Congress in there that know how the game is played. He can work with them. But when you have people like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, you can't work with those people. They're not there to actually get things done. They're there to be controversial. They're there to be, to be a talking point and a household name. And the Republicans have chased out quite a few people. They've chased out a lot of good lawmakers, and I say good only in that they were able to get things done. I don't agree with a lot of the Republican policies, but there are a lot of them that have retired that you used to be able to rely on to get stuff passed. They might not agree with it, like I said earlier. It'd be a give and take. They would agree to do it in exchange for something else, but stuff got done. It's not this obstructionist politics like we have now. Let's see. One of the things I know we got to work on when we get after the election is we got to do something about the Supreme Court. Now, whether that's expand the court or whether or not that's whether it's expanding it, whether that's impeaching Alito and Thomas, I don't know. I know we got to do something. I think Joe Biden is going to be more open to expanding the Supreme Court when there is not another election to run. Because expanding the Supreme Court is a controversial topic. It is not as popular as you think it would be. But it needs done. But you risk alienating definitely any Republicans that may be considering voting for Joe Biden against Donald Trump because they don't like Trump, where they vote for Joe Biden but they'll vote Republican the rest of the way down the ticket. If you start talking about overturning the Supreme Court or turning it on its head by expanding it by 4 people. So he's not going to announce it before the election. But if he turns around, gets reelected, he doesn't have another election to win. He could get behind that. Get the Supreme Court expanded out to 13, put in 4 justices, as long as he's got the Senate to back the appointments. Next thing you know, the conservative majority becomes a conservative minority, and we can start getting some stuff done without having to worry about the Supreme Court overturning it. John Michael says, yes, expanded 13, 1 for each appellate court. Yeah, that makes sense. That it was 9. We've had it at more before. The number has gone up and down a couple times. I think it should still be even, or it should stay like an odd number. So there's never an even split without a justice recusing themselves. That way, you always come to some sort of a majority consensus. But no, I think expanded to 13. And then we also have to look at the potential for Alito and Thomas to be retiring. I had heard a while back that they had been talking about or floating the idea of retiring, but they want to retire with a Republican president because they want to be replaced by a Republican. So, in theory, I did a video about this, I think, yesterday or today, talking about vacancies. And should Donald Trump be reelected, he would potentially have the ability to put 2 more justices on the Supreme Court for 30 or 40 years, because he'll probably appoint somebody in their 40s who could probably serve for 30 or 40. And that is huge. I mean, look at what happened under Donald Trump's first term. They held out the seat for Merrick that was offered to Merrick Garland by Barack Obama, said February was too close to an election, and Mitch McConnell refused to pass a vote. They didn't want to hold a vote on it, didn't want to hold him up and say yes or no, because he didn't have the votes to reject Merrick Garland. I firmly believe that Mitch McConnell did not hold that vote, because if they would have, Merrick Garland would have passed, and he would be on the Supreme Court right now and not as Attorney General. And then, let's see, was it Kennedy that retired that got us Gorsuch? Yeah. Kennedy retiring probably still would have happened. That wouldn't have probably changed. But then Ruth Bader Ginsburg passes, and with days to go to the election, they push through Amy Coney Barrett. Now, if Donald Trump gets another term, I could see Alito and Thomas both retiring somewhere early in that Republican term, just to make sure that they get their, they want to get out while they can before anything else happens with the DOJ. But then again, if a Republican wins, DOJ investigation into January 6th is going to probably cease. But again, I've said all night, I don't believe that I don't believe that the Republicans have a chance to win in November. I think Joe Biden is going to win. For those of you considering voting third party, don't. We need every vote that we can for the Democrats, up and down the ballot. On top of it, I've done numerous videos talking about this, but it doesn't do any good to put a third party candidate in, no matter what party, when that party has no seats in Congress. They will not have any power in Congress, so they will need help from both sides to get anything accomplished. And it's going to be much harder to get any sort of policy done with a third party. You're probably right. You're probably right, Jake, that there is no independent or third-party candidate. I mean, I think Jill Stein. I think Green Party is going to have somebody. There's the Chance Oliver for the Libertarians, but there's nobody that has a chance. And like I said, they don't have any ability to get much done. I didn't hear that one, but wouldn't surprise me. That Jill Stein was arrested. Well, now that I think about it, maybe I did hear that. But anyway, doesn't matter what party you're with, if you're Green Party or Libertarian or whatever, if you don't have members of the House and the Senate, it makes getting anything else done very, very hard. Cornel West. I don't even know who that is. I don't even know who that is or what party he's running for. That's not a name I'm familiar with. But I mean, a lot of people are saying, what about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? Well, he's nuts. And he's basically a Trumper without being a Trumper. He's says a lot of the things that Trump and Trump supporters would say. He's an anti-vaxxer, and yeah, the only thing that he can say that is true and a benefit to him, for independence, is that he's not Donald Trump, and for independents that don't like Joe Biden, is that he's not Joe Biden. That's the only thing he can say. And that is a horrible way to pick a president. Oh, women definitely will vote Democratic. You're right, incognito. I think you're going to see one hell of a blue wave, probably even a tsunami. I think I've said a lot during this live that I think Republicans are going to lose the House. Democrats will keep the Senate, not by much. 33 seats are up for grabs in the Senate. Democrats hold 29 of them right now. And we are losing one of those for sure with Joe Manchin. I don't see any way the Democrats get a senator reelected in very red West Virginia. I don't see it. Joe Manchin was our best shot to keep that seat because he was a very, very conservative Democrat. But with him choosing not to run again, we just don't get that seat back, which means we need either to hold the rest of the 28, or we got to pick one up. And my math might be slightly off on how many we actually are up. Maybe it's 26, but there's, I think, 9 seats up for grabs that are Republican controlled this time. And Democrats are going to have to at least, they can't lose many without any pickups. They got to pick up a couple. And I think a couple of them are up for grabs. I think I don't know what that Ion Pryor Citizens for Sanity is. I have no idea what that is. But I know Ted Cruz is up for re-election in Texas, and nobody likes Ted Cruz. I think Ted Cruz may be on his way out the door. I don't remember if there's a seat up for grabs in Florida, but if there is a senator spot up for grabs in Florida, Florida could be in play because there's going to be an abortion amendment question on the ballot, as well as legalization of marijuana. With all House seats are up for re-election, Jake. They're all going to be up for re-election. They go up every 2 years. The Senate goes every 6, with a third of them being up for re-election. Just thought I'd let you know. Didn't know if you were thinking of something else. But with having an abortion question on the ballot in Florida, as well as a marijuana question on the ballot in Florida, I think puts Florida in play. Both potentially if there is a Senate seat, which I'm not sure on, but for the Electoral College. I think that's going to be, that Florida could be in play. And if Florida flips to the Democrats, well, that's ball game. I believe that is 100% ball game for Joe Biden. If you take Florida, California, and New York, I don't think there's any way Donald Trump can math out the electoral votes necessary to still win. Like I said, we got a lot going on. There is the case in Georgia, Donald Trump's Georgia case. I don't know if I've talked about that during this part of the live or not, but that Georgia case is currently delayed while they review. There's an appeal going on about whether or not Fani Willis should be removed as the prosecutor at her from this case, because she had a relationship with an attorney she hired that was part of her office. That hearing will not be held until October, which all but guarantees this trial will not progress until after that point. So it won't happen until after October and after the election. And then the case in Florida, Judge Cannon has basically backlogged a whole bunch of motions, but There is one that they are asking whether or not to dismiss the case, claiming that Jack Smith was unconstitutionally appointed. And if he was unconstitutionally appointed, that goes into a whole mess. I don't think she's going to do this. She's backed into a corner. And I think if she goes against Donald Trump, whatever he has on her will come out, because that's how Donald Trump is. He is reactionary. He will come after anybody who he does not think is loyal enough. And then if she sides with Donald Trump, Jack Smith goes to the 11th Circuit, and the 11th Circuit, admonishes her and gets a different judge in there. So once there's a new judge, that case is going to move, I believe, rather quickly. As far as whether or not anything on the classified documents, I know there are rules in place with how to handle classified documents and having somebody else deal with it all. And using in stand-in documents and things like that as far as evidence goes. So that case will move on pretty fast. Then you've got the DC case, in which you got the January 6th charges. Now I was hoping that case might be brought before the election. However, that doesn't look like that's going to be the case, as we're still waiting on the Supreme Court to come in and give us a ruling on whether or not Donald Trump has any form of immunity, which I don't believe he does, because if they give Donald Trump immunity, that means Joe Biden has the same immunity, and Joe Biden could go in, remove 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices, appoint new ones, and they couldn't stop him. They're not going to do that. What I think the Supreme Court is probably going to do is they are going to come up with some kind of a test, something to determine whether or not actions are considered official acts, and then they'll send it back to Judge Chutkan. What Judge Chutkan could potentially do is hold a hearing on what is official acts, and basically Jack Smith would be able to, without a jury, because this wouldn't be a trial, and really without the defense the defense could try to counter whatever and present whatever defense as to these things being official acts, but Jack Smith could then run basically his entire case in front of the judge and say, look, here are all of the actions that we're saying Donald Trump took throughout this entire thing, and then she can decide whether or not any of it is considered official acts. But then all of the evidence and all of everything they're saying would be out in the open, with the public seeing all of it leading up to the election. And then she'd make a decision on what is an official act. That would get appealed to the appellate court, and then from there, once it's appealed to the appellate court, it would obviously end up right back in front of the Supreme Court again. But the damage would then have already been done by having the entire case and all of the evidence out in public leading up to the election. If 34 felonies is enough to start polling saying Donald Trump should drop out of the race, could you imagine what all of the evidence coming out about January 6th coming out pre-election, showing what he did in the build-up to it and how he helped plan it and how he was involved in the day-to-day planning and strategizing of it? I mean, that would be huge, I think, in the terms of shifting voters away from Donald Trump. As for, like I've been saying for a while, I still don't know for sure if Donald Trump will be the nominee. Republicans have their convention on July 15th. That is 4 days after sentencing for Donald Trump. Uh, so after sentencing, uh, Donald Trump is. We're going to find out what the sentence is. Whether it's going to be a slap on the wrist, whether it's going to be home confinement, whether he's going to Rikers. I'm hearing some Trump supporters saying they're gonna handcuff themselves to Rikers Island if he gets sent to Rikers, if he gets jail time. Well, I say go ahead and do it. If they're going to do it, if they're going to try to handcuff themselves to Rikers, well, I say go for it. It's not going to work the way you think it is. They're not going to stop. So is that I am Prior Citizens for Sanity and Conservative Partnership? You said that you're saying that's a think tank for Donald Trump. Well, if it is, he definitely needs a think tank, because he doesn't put a lot of thought behind anything he says. He'll say whatever he whatever comes to his mind that he thinks is going to help him in the moment. Um, he'll say something one day and he'll backtrack and say something else the next, just because it was convenient for him. But no, I don't think there's any way Republicans can win in November if uh, so this think tank is domestic, okay, and it's for undermining democracy. Yeah, there is a section of the Republican Party that is out to undermine our democracy. They're out to destroy our way of life and put in a dictator. Um, it is weird to me that we've gotten to that point in American history but we've always had kind of that threat, I guess, but we've always done a better job of pushing it back, and it never became as close to mainstream. But again, I don't think Donald Trump is going to win in November. I don't think there's a chance. Um, and depending on what his sentence is on July 11th, I don't know how the Republicans can put up how the Republicans can put up Donald Trump as their nominee. I don't see it happening, especially if he is sentenced to jail. If Donald Trump gets a prison sentence, I don't see how the Republicans can put him up as a nominee. He can't win in November, and how can they go to the American people and say vote for our guy, but he is currently sitting in a prison cell and can't come out and campaign, and I don't think he would get immediately released if he became president. So what is he supposed to do? Anti-capitalist veteran said, how about a vote for neither? I was talking about that earlier. That is not a good option. You vote for a third party or something like that, and let's just say wild chance that Robert F. Kennedy gets elected. Well, he's got no friends in either. Being an independent, the Democrats are going to block a lot of what he tries to do. The Republicans are going to try to block whatever he does. And there's just no way for a third party person to work. And if you vote for a third party, then that's not going to help. And yeah, Um, let's see. Yeah, Laura Trump being the co-chair of the RNC. Yeah. Um, that is going to be a problem, except if Donald Trump does get prison time, I could see them kicking her out as chair of the RNC at a last minute basis and moving somebody else in. It's entirely possible. Right now, she's only the chair of the RNC because Trump is the top of the ticket. When the mob boss is gone, they usually tend to take out the loyalists in the family of the rest of the mob family. So I don't expect her to be the head of the RNC much past Donald Trump being sentenced to prison, should that be the case, and if he actually is in a prison cell. Um, but no, there's they said, I think the Democrats got a good shot. Donald Trump is not looking good. And the down ballot races aren't looking good either. You mentioned Laura Trump being head of the RNC. Well, one of the things she's doing is she's funneling a lot of their money into the Donald Trump campaign, and they're taking the campaign money to pay his legal fees. Now, his legal fees are going about $90,000 a day. So, for whatever that's worth. There's just not the money in the RNC, and from there, if there's no money in the RNC, there's no money for the down ballot races. So there could be more seats available to pick up, especially in some competitive districts where there just isn't. They don't have the funds to keep pushing out ads and doing mailers and door knocking and things like that. So yeah, we got a lot going on. We got the Hunter Biden trial. I don't remember if I talked about that earlier or not. But with Hunter Biden, some of the testimony is not looking good for Hunter. Talking about him being an addict and how bad it was and things like that, which we knew. We knew Hunter was going to be an addict. That was going to come out. That's not new news. But Joe Biden has said he is not going to pardon Hunter regardless of the outcome. He's going to let this play out, and if Hunter gets a prison sentence, then that's going to be what happens. But the burden is on the prosecution in that case. Hunter, all their team has to do is poke a hole in the thought that Hunter Biden did this intentionally, that there was some nefarious thing behind it. Because effectively, what he did, and I don't hear any of the gun rights activists coming out and saying Second Amendment shall not be infringed, but effectively, he checked the wrong box on a form, and if they can prove that he didn't knowingly check the wrong box, like if he thought it meant was he currently under the influence of drugs and he wasn't, and one of the hardest things is with a lot of people who have addictions, it is very hard to admit while you're doing it that you have an addiction. So if they can poke a hole in this, that he thought he was, following the law when he filled out the form, well, then, they've proven reasonable doubt and the jury would acquit. It's going to be up to the jury, but something else to note is that almost every day of this trial, Dr. Joe Biden has been there. Hunter's stepmom has shown up every single day of the trial. It wasn't until toward the very end that any of the Trumps showed up to support Donald, and then it was only Eric. and most of them stayed away. Melania never once showed up. And I think that's telling. But Joe Biden did not show up. Must have been one of the last days when Ivanka and Don Jr. were also there. I don't remember hearing that Tiffany Trump was there at all. And I don't remember Ivanka being there. I think Don Jr. might have been there one of the days. And but I could be wrong. But most of the 5 weeks of that trial, there were no Trump family members in attendance. It wasn't toward the very end that anybody did show up. While I'm currently doing the live, I don't have a way to look it up, but I will look it up. And if I am wrong, I am wrong. I would accept that. But yeah, for the most part, the Trumps were not there. Melania never did show up at all. Barron didn't show up. That is what it is. I'm just saying, Joe Biden has been there almost every day. I think today was the only day she did not go to court with Hunter. She could, because she was in Normandy at the D-Day ceremony, and flew back, and will be in court tomorrow with Hunter, and is going to go back to France for the weekend with Joe Biden. But yeah, we got a lot going on. We have this. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Let me know. Let's see, what haven't I covered? Covered quite a bit in this a little over an hour that I've been doing this live. We have Republicans have said they want to come out and they want to launch investigations into Democrats. They want to. Stephen Miller, former advisor to President Trump, said he wants the heads of the House committees to come after different Democrats and investigate. What they're saying, DAs in differing in deep red counties and states should be investigating Democrats. They've been investigating Democrats for years now, and mostly came up with nothing. How many times did Hillary sit in front of a committee and testify about varying things, and nothing has been ever proven where they could charge her with anything? And that's the difference here. We have, they're showing up when they get subpoenaed, they show up to talk. Whereas you have Republicans who did not answer a congressional subpoena when the J6 committee asked for them to come testify. Look at Jim Jordan as a prime example. Mark Meadows did not testify. Steve Bannon did not testify. He blew off the congressional subpoena, and now he's got to report to prison. He gets 4 months in prison. I don't know who's going to take over his podcast while he's behind bars, but there's that. He's going to be in prison, so at least one of the J6 people gets prison for something. After the election, you're going to see probably the superseding indictments come out for January 6th. They initially only wanted to take on Donald Trump because they were hoping to get this trial through all the way through into a jury decision leading up to they wanted to be in the court right now. They wanted to be on trial now. But they're not. Donald Trump got his delays. We're still waiting for the Supreme Court to come back on the immunity thing. Do not know if that or when that was going to be back on track. But after the election, and you're going to see, I think you're going to see all the superseding indictments come out. They're going to go after sitting members of Congress, people like Ginny Thomas, Steve Bannon, other high-profile people within the Trump organization and Trump administration and his inner circle. They're going to get their indictments for their role in January 6th, and it's going to be interesting to see which names are on that list. I've got a few in mind that I think are going to get indictments. Mark Meadows already has immunity, which everything went through Mark Meadows, and Mark Meadows gave him all of his text message records. They have all of it. So I think there's going to be a lot of people indicted. One of the names I've heard they're looking into is Chuck Grassley, our senator here in Iowa. I'm not a fan of Chuck Grassley, but he seemed to be in the thick of it as far as he was going to be the one to take over and run the joint session of Congress should Mike Pence not be there. And he made a comment about Mike Pence not being there or not showing up, which leads me to believe that he knew more than what we know that has been made public. It's going to be interesting to see who those names are in the superseding indictments. All right. Well, I think I'm going to wrap this live up. This has been fun, and I'm looking forward to doing another one now that I've got it under my, under my belt, and I kind of know what I'm doing a little better. If you only caught part of it, or you want to see the entire live, I have recorded it. It will be going up over on my YouTube channel. There is a link in my bio, otherwise Analytical Iowan on YouTube. And I will catch you guys next time.